Where's Nick?
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Mr. Forbes. My name is Darlington Nagu. And here's my question. Looking back, can you recall one or 2 points in your career that were pivotal towards accelerating you to the position that you are in today?
One was, growing up, I was always interested in the family business. When I was in school, I liked to do from time to time in grade school news sheets, just print them up, whatever. One day I did one grading my teachers. Figured if they could grade me, I could return the compliment. That did not go very far, especially some of the comments I made. But anyway, so I was sort of in the genes, but I was wondering whether I should go into the family business. And after college and a stint in the Army, I decided to do it. And it worked out. The reason it worked out was that my father had worked for his father, and therefore was very well aware of all the traps and emotions that can stand in the way of that. So fortunately, we were large enough where I didn't have to report to him. I'd see him, obviously, but I reported to an editor who didn't fear anybody, who would never survive today. He was a brilliant editor, but he didn't mince words. And today, you have to be so careful with kids about not being a bully or, badgering or whatever. But anyway, I worked for him for a while. He didn't hesitate to say about a piece, that was a piece of crap. And so you learned. And so that was a pivotal one. And then making the decision to try political office. And life throws these things up. I was the head of an organization on the side called Empower America, which was founded by Jack Kemp, Gene Kirkpatrick, a former UN ambassador, and Bill Bennett, who's still around today. But anyway, it was coming up with ideas to get the country moving. And we all thought that at the time, this fellow Jack Kemp was going to run for president. He had done it once. He'd been in the cabinet. He was really the architect for Reagan's tax cuts in the early 1980s. And former football player. And so near Christmas 1994, we all thought we were going to get ready for gear for a run in 96. And Jack called us in his office and said he's decided he's not going to run. And so, well, what do we do now? So I looked over the field, didn't find the kind of Reagan-esque candidate that I thought should be the party nominee. So I decided, okay, instead of complaining about it, try it yourself. And everyone gulped and wondered what I'd been inhaling, but went ahead and did it anyway, and got some good issues across, like the flat tax. We don't have that in this country yet, but 30 other countries have adopted it. Medical savings accounts was another big thing. Health savings accounts, another big thing we pushed. Ultimately, that happened. So my grandfather, I guess I took after him. He, as I mentioned, was a business reporter, and then he decided instead of just writing about entrepreneurs and business people, why not do it himself? And he started his own company. And so you never know where these things lead. So did not work out. My kids were very nice about it. Said, oh, great that you tried, blah, blah, blah. Although I can't imagine they're too thrilled to see their inheritance go up in, billboards, radio ads, flyers. Poof, bye. But anyway, they can make their own decisions and have and are. So those are two biggies. Trying the presidency. Then before that, going with the company. And then when my father died, he died at a relatively young age, heart disease at 70. He was a larger-than-life figure. For example, he was very big on motorcycles. As he got older, it got worse. He started commuting from New Jersey to New York, 40, 50 miles on a motorcycle. Then even worse, decided to ride motorcycles in New York City, which was, he survived that.
Wow.
But we had generational role reversal where the kids were warning the father, these things can be dangerous, you got to be careful, you can get hurt. And so succeeding a figure like that, but fortunately my father taught me and my brothers, I have 3 brothers and 1 sister, he taught us, he said, I have my own way of doing things, you'll develop your way of doing things, but don't try to imitate, find out what works for you. And that was very good advice.
I like that.
And so I'm still too young to do motorcycles.
Good morning. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Taylor. You're obviously around a lot of successful people. What are some of the traits or elements that you see within all of the successful people over the years?
Being around successful people, you have to realize times they were not successful. You're not born successful. Yeah, you achieve it often through hard work and some luck along the way. And so the attributes are you're not balanced, you are focused on something, and that can take up a lot of time. There are only certain amounts of hours a day, and there are sacrifices you will make if you pursue something. And you have to live with that. The idea you can do everything at once, no, it's not the way life is. So making the choice on, in terms of what you want to focus on is extremely important, and knowing that there's going to be, could be a price to pay. And then learning from failure. I'll give you the classic example was Steve Jobs. If you took away his name and gave his personality traits to anyone in HR, they'd throw up. They'd say, get this guy out of here. Vain, egotistical, put people down, possible to work with, steal ideas. You'd say, no way, which is why this guy got fired from his own company before the age of 30. And over the next few years, painfully, he learned how to become a successful leader. How do you put together talented teams and keep them together and motivated? It wasn't natural. He had to learn it. And that's what you have to tell yourself. You're not arriving full formed. And so he continued to do things, had some successes, big one with, he eventually merged with Disney, Pixar, but some others that did not work out so well. But he had to learn, all right, how do you become a successful CEO? And he did it brilliantly, but it was not, he did not arrive that way into the world.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Mr. Forbes, it's an honor to have you here, sir. My
be here.
question is, what is your greatest personal success and your biggest business regret?
Personal success, family. Got engaged 5 weeks after I met my future wife. Now, why waste time? That was over half a century ago. But, mentioned 5 daughters. But on the business side, I think the success was the painful transformation from the old to the new. And I want to emphasize that was a really drawn-out, painful period. It was not easy at all. And in terms of failures, we had plenty of them. We tried a lot of projects, new magazines and the like that flopped, or that had some success and then outlived their success. But that's part and parcel. You cannot be afraid to go to the plate and swing and realize oftentimes you're going to strike out and have to live with the consequences. And sometimes it takes time to dig out of those consequences too. And you think you've dug out, and then no, you didn't really dig out. So when we were combining Forbes.com and Forbes magazine, and combining the sales and marketing sides, that was painful. Looking back, we probably should have done the structures differently, the organizations differently, but we did not know. And that's the thing, you don't know. You got to keep trying, though, and hopefully you have enough slack or ability to do it. But yeah, it's not easy. And by the way, totally aside, when I mentioned striking out, baseball. You have baseball fans here?
Sure.
You know, the problem with baseball is the games are too long now. And the reason there are two reforms, can't resist this, there are two reforms that should be made to save the game from boredom. It's a great game, by the way, I think, the best. But one is, and they may do this in Major League Baseball, and that is on the mound, the pitcher, no more than 15 seconds between each pitch. 17 seconds if there's a player on base, a runner on base. They've tried it with some minor league teams. It knocked off 20 minutes and increased the flow and fluidity of the game. The other thing they should do is no leaving the batter's box unless you've been brushed back or something. When I was young, you didn't leave the batter's box for any reason unless something had happened, like getting hit with a pitch or something. And today, they go up to the plate, a pitch, then they decide they got to change their gloves, maybe go to Starbucks and get a coffee and a massage, and maybe take a trip to Paris, and then they come back and take another pitch and go through the same. Stop it. play the game. So anyway, parenthetical, that's how we say baseball.
Baseball reform, I like that. I have a question. Do you think there's a lot of people in this room who want to make a big impact in this world? Do you think we can make a bigger impact as entrepreneurs in the private sector or as politicians in the public sector? Who do you think can make a bigger impact?
The bigger impact will be in the private sector. Maybe eventually you'd go in the public sector, but if you did, you would be informed of what it takes to make things happen. A lot of these people have no conception of all the detail and hard work to make things happen, so they just decree it. Do it. Like a kid, do it. I remember growing up, they once took us to a dairy to show that milk just was not something on the shelf or delivered in those days in a bottle. What it took, the cows, feeding the cows, milking the cows, pasteurizing the milk, bottling the milk, delivering the milk, all the steps that go into it. They have no conception of all the stuff that goes into it. So if you have a knack, go do your entrepreneurial thing. It'll hold you in good stead. And if you want to go immediately in the public sector, also have something on the side that you can fall back on. But also keep reminding yourself, as Coolidge did, what it is you're there for, what it is you're trying to do. And he never became, even though he held numerous offices, never became a hack, always teaching himself and not get in a rut and letting the bubble, the world, overtake you and corrupt you, where you start to think, I understand it, and you people don't. Maybe we don't understand it and shouldn't.
Yeah. It's good. And do we have another one? I think we have time for one or two more.
Hey, Mr. Forbes, thank you so much for such a refreshing message today. It's been wonderful. You are surrounded by legacy banners, and I'd like to know, what does legacy mean to you?
Legacy, appropriate. Legacy in the best sense is something that takes the best of what's been done and try to apply it to current and changing conditions, but not forget why you had a legacy to begin with. What made it a legacy, and how do you take the spirit of that into the future?
I like that. I like that a lot.
Hi, Mr. Forbes. I had a question. Could you define what leadership is, what it means to you, and if you had a good book recommendation?
Leadership is, by the way, a book you might want to read. It's a biography of Steve Jobs. It came out about 8 or 10 years ago.
The Isaacson one, right?
Walter Isaacson. And very, very, Jobs knew that as soon as he died, the critical books were going to come. And so he figured, work with this noted historian and therefore get your view of things out there so people would have a reference instead of having it cold and a blank slate. And but in terms of leadership, it's trust, having a sense of direction, having how to get there, and realizing there's so many things. Realizing you can't do everything yourself once you reach a certain stage, and how you learn to delegate without losing control. Can be very hard to do. A lot of entrepreneurs get to a certain stage and say, fine, adios, I'm going to start it all over again in another area. And so you got to realize what you're good at. And also never underestimate the importance of partnerships. Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak. Bill Gates had a partner. And Henry Ford, who created the greatest industrial company 120 years ago, Ford Motor, had a partner, a fellow named James Couzens, and completely forgotten name today. And it shows how strange the world can work. Ford was an utterly inept executive. He wouldn't be able to manage a store. He couldn't manage his own desk. Utterly incompetent. James Couzens was all thumbs when it came to making things. You know, you wanted to do a model car or something, he was useless. And yet together they created one of the greatest industrial enterprises of the day. And so the partner, you don't have to like the partner, but you have that complements you. So don't hesitate about the virtues at some point of having a partnership. By the way, Ford eventually squeezed Couzens out because he had more of the stock. Ford did not like strong people around him, unfortunately, which nearly wrecked the company later. But Couzens was a fierce fighter, and after he left Ford, he became mayor of Detroit and then U.S. Senator from Michigan. And when he was U.S. Senator, he went after the IRS and then called the Internal Revenue Bureau. And so one day, the head of the IRS, at the behest of the Treasury Department, came up to Couzens in the Senate and handed him a subpoena saying they're charging him with tax fraud, that on the sale he made to Henry Ford, he owed $10 million in taxes, which would be hundreds of millions equivalent today. So Couzens, being Couzens, fought the IRS fiercely. And so when they finally reached a settlement in the courts, remember, the IRS asked for $10 million. When they finally reached a settlement, the IRS owed Couzens $1 million. That's the kind of guy he was. But but in leadership, it's trust, vision, working with teams, and the importance of, there's a lot of research, thankfully, being done on teams. And usually the most effective teams are 8 to 10 people. When it gets above that, and they learned that thousands of years ago with the military, you start with a group of 10, squad, and then build on that. But if you get more than 8 or 10, it takes on a different dynamic. And so Jeff Bezos, it's amazing when you look at whatever you think of Jeff Bezos, but space and all that. But with Amazon, what's amazing is Amazon's now one of the 2 big players, along with Microsoft, in the cloud. And whoever would have thought that a retailer would be a big presence. But Bezos knows how to use teams, and he has what he calls the 2 pizza rule. He said when a team is working late at night on a project, if it takes more than 2 pizzas to feed it, the team is too big.
I like that. Can we give Steve Forbes a round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was fantastic.